Hello, this is Anil Kumar from Back to the Bible radio broadcast. We finish our series, Journey to the Cross, with the story of what happened on that great day of Jesus' resurrection. Let's listen now to this special Easter message from Dr. John Neufeld entitled, Sunday, the Journey Ends with a Shout of Triumph.
Imagine you were to interview 4 reliable witnesses of a car accident. Imagine the 4 witness the accident from a different perspective. One in a car just behind the accident, the second standing beside the road, the third on the overpass, and the fourth standing kitty-corner to the second witness, also beside the road. Now, the mere fact that the perspective changes means that each one recounts what will be slightly different. Each one has seen the events and reports them with absolute accuracy, but the things he sees are unique to his vantage point. One of the ways you become certain about the accuracy of the witnesses is that they don't tell exactly the same story, although they all witnessed the same event. That doesn't mean any one of them lied or even made mistakes. If the events were exactly the same, it wouldn't be an accurate story. It would be collusion. It would mean the 4 conspired together to give us a consistent account, but then it wouldn't be a true account. True accounts mean that each eyewitness tells us exactly what they saw from the perspective that they were standing. But there is a cool thing about having 4 witnesses. When you compare their stories, combine their accounts, you really do get a whole picture of what really happened in a way that one eyewitness never could. You could reconstruct the events and become absolutely certain that what is being said accurately reflects what actually happened. There are 4 eyewitness accounts in the New Testament concerning the birth, life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, and we've been following and reconstructing the event called Passion Week. And when you put all these events together, a very clear picture emerges. What emerges is an accurate, historical, non-manipulated picture of what Jesus actually experienced during Passion Week. Today I'm going to put together the 4 eyewitness accounts of the resurrection of Jesus. What we're going to see is what really happened 2,000 years ago. It's not collusion. It's not invented, not made up for the sake of helping people believe the unbelievable, but rather a picture of something that changed the way that we would all see the world. In the last living moments on the cross, Jesus cried out with a loud voice and said, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." With that, he bowed his head and died. At that very moment, the veil in the temple, that thick, rich, ornamental curtain hiding the covering of the Holy of Holies, was torn in two from top to bottom. There was a great earthquake in the city. The rocks were split as the city of Jerusalem reeled under the outrage of the death of Christ. One centurion, witnessing this phenomenon, cried out, "Truly, this was the Son of God." There were a group of women, all that were left of the followers of Christ, who stayed to the bitter end. The disciples had all fled, and there, as the day was wearing on, there on the cross hung the dead, lifeless body of Jesus. It must have seemed barren and cold and overwhelmingly empty. The show was over. Everyone was going home. For that group of courageous and faithful women, hope had died that day. The Jesus movement was now officially over. All that was left for humiliated people was to comfort each other, find solace in some way, live through the humiliation to come, and try to get on with their lives. There were a few courageous people left. One was a man named Joseph of Arimathea, a member of the Jewish Sanhedrin and a secret follower of Jesus. Because he had standing in the community, he went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Pilate gave him permission. Joseph climbed the ladder of the cross and yanked out nails out of this mangled and lifeless corpse and let it fall in a crumpled heap to the ground. He was joined by another secret follower, also in the Sanhedrin, Nicodemus. Then they took clean linen and wrapped him up carefully, quickly added some spices, and they must have put the body on a cart and brought it to a tomb Joseph had purchased for his family's burial site. No one had ever been laid there before. Since it was almost the Sabbath and the sun was setting, there was no way to prepare the body properly according to all the Jewish burial customs. Joseph simply laid it in his tomb cut out of a rock. Because the way bodies decay without embalming in a hot climate, he no doubt had a stone rolled in front of it until someone would come back after the Sabbath and do it all right. The women at the cross all followed Joseph to the tomb. No doubt they were stunned and weeping and making up their minds that once Sabbath was over, they would come back and properly prepare the body. In the meantime, because of the unrest in the city, a full Roman guard was placed outside the tomb to guard it. There would be no disturbance here, only the dead body of Jesus, slowly decaying from the consciousness of his followers. This was clearly the end. Sabbath came and went, and now it was Sunday. Just at sunrise, the group of the women who had been at the cross gathered together. They had spices and burial perfumes to hide the odor of death. His burial would be proper. No doubt they were not sure how to roll the stone away, but they would go and try. This was their last act of love for a hope that had now died. Among them were Mary Magdalene, another Mary, the mother of two of the disciples. There was Salome and Joanna and probably some more not mentioned in the accounts. They went as a group to get it done. And on the way there came a second earthquake. Of course, the women could not have known what the second earthquake meant, but at that moment, at the tomb, angels, powerful, mighty warriors of God, descended on the tomb. The Roman guard, battle-hardened fighting men, had never seen such a phenomenon. They may have thought this amazing spectacle came from the gods, and in sheer, raw, unstoppable terror, they ran much as cowards do in the day of battle. Even though deserting their post might lead to their execution, to remain was far more frightening than anything that Rome could mete out. And with the guards gone, the angels pulled away the stone, and Jesus stepped out of the tomb. He had broken death's power, defeated the great ancient enemy, and laid it in ruins. This is the day that death died. This was the day that Christ announced his triumph over demons, hell, sin, and despair. This was the day when the seed of the woman crushed the head of the serpent. This was the day when deathless life, for the first time, was introduced into this earth. This was the dawn of a new era, an everlasting life, an eternal life, a life that is right now promised to all who will believe. That doesn't mean that followers of Jesus will not die. It only means that the same life that raised Jesus from the dead is infused into all who believe. It's called the new birth. It's called regeneration. It means that a down payment of the life to come has already come into the experience of believers now. But I'm getting far ahead of myself. But there was none to see the actual resurrection. That needs to be said. No disciples, no women, no Joseph of Arimathea, none of the Roman soldiers saw it. Only the angels saw it. So how do we know this thing really happened? Well, you have to listen to the rest of the story. The women weren't quite there yet, but just shortly after that, they arrived at the tomb and found that the stone was rolled away. No guards, just silence. But the place was not quite deserted. Mary Magdalene did see two men standing there, but she did not know that they were angels. The other women also wondered what all this meant. No doubt a discussion arose immediately. Mary seems to have left the group and gone back to the city looking for Peter and John. She found them and gave her explanation of what she had seen. She said, "They have taken him." And by that she meant the soldiers, or maybe the authorities, or the Jewish leaders, or whoever they meant. They had removed the body. This was just another outrage, another mocking, another reminder that they were a defeated group. And while she was away seeking Peter and John, the rest of the women remained. One of the angels led the other women into the tomb and showed them the grave clothes of Jesus, all neatly folded and put into a funeral bench where he had been laid, and then looked at them and asked, "Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here. He is risen. Go tell the disciples he is risen. He is going before you to Galilee, up north, where he used to minister, and there you will see him." The women left the tomb and hurried to find the disciples. Meanwhile, Mary Magdalene, unaware of this other event, has found Peter and John and told them about the theft of Jesus' body. The two men make their way to the tomb, but soon the urgency of it and the outrage of it, emotions just take over and they begin to run. John is younger and he gets there first and peers in. She's right, no body. Peter, huffing and puffing, comes up behind him, always far more impulsive, bursts into the tomb and sees the grave clothes neatly folded. John, who wrote of this, simply confessed that neither he nor Peter understood the scriptures and the prophecies that Christ would rise from the dead. But John says he instantly believed Jesus was raised from the dead. But Peter didn't. And it is confusing. They leave without any answers, and they wander slowly back into Jerusalem. When we come back, we're going to see how confusion and sorrow and the death of hope gave rise to a confident certainty that Jesus Christ and He alone is the only hope for this world. He has conquered over death, and behold, He lives.
This introduction has given us a realistic yet vivid picture of what happened on the day that Jesus rose from the grave. Seeing it through the eyes and perspective of all the four gospel writers, we benefit from a greater and more complete picture. But the story is not over. Dr. Neufeld will return to the scene of the empty tomb tomorrow. There stands Mary for the first encounter with the risen Christ. Back to the Bible, leading people into a dynamic relationship with God.